week as we bring you clearer pictures of happenings around the world as the editor picks the latest information. Editor's Pick. Join us.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us. The program is Editor's Pick, and it's coming to you live from the studios of River State Television, Channel 22 here in Port Harcourt this Sunday evening. I'm Otuna here as winner. When we come on like this on Editor's Pick, we tend to look at the burning issues, the major things happening, what is going on, what are the people talking about, what is affecting us here and beyond. And so today is not an exception, as we tend to look at what is going on now. And some people are asking questions, they don't even understand what it is. It's an opportunity for us to understand this today, as we tend to look at a topic which I will unravel as we move on. Now, we understand that the Company and Allied Matters Bill was signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari on the 7th of August 2020. And of course, the new Companies and Allied Matters Act, which is called CAMA 2020, or otherwise the Act, introduces new provision to reflect modern commercial realities, as well as reduce compliance costs and regulatory hurdles for businesses operating in Nigeria. The CAMA 2020 repeals the CAMA 1990 and, among other provisions, introduced several changes. Some clergymen have aired their grievances against the Act. And on Editor's Pick today, we'll try to unravel the changes embedded in the Act. And my guest happens to be Barrister Henry Peter Ekene. Barrister Henry Ekene is a legal practitioner and human rights activist. He's also the immediate past National Publicity Secretary of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights. Welcome to Editor's Speak.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm so elated, very excited being here on your platform.
All right. And so that brings us to the topic, CAMA 2020, as we look at businesses and the religious part of it. Okay, before we came on board, we're trying to actually understand these things better. You know that if it's a professional that is there to explain, people would know, okay, this is it and that is that, because there has been, confusions left, right, and center since CAMA came on board. A lot of questions have been asked, a lot of confusions, and we need to understand this from the legal point of view. Now, what does this mean? What does it portend for a business owner? We know that as Nigeria is, once you try to go into business, you could have a beautiful idea and you go there, you want to actualize it, you want to succeed, you want to make progress. But what we have is it doesn't actually turn out that way. Businesses have not been doing well in Nigeria. And then we're having this law, and a lot of persons are complaining. What does the law actually mean to the person who is having a beautiful idea and tends to go into business?
Now, the world over, every economy is driven by enterprises. Every individual who contributes one way or the other to the economy of a country or a state comes in two particular forms, either as an individual in your own capacity as a person, or in some enterprise form. And then every economy, every country has a regulation, a legal framework to regulate economic activities in that country. Beginning with our constitution, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 has amended the fundamental objectives and directive principles to the effect that we aspire to have a robust economy, a robust country where every individual will have a seamless participation in the economy and then resources and necessary resources around them. But we do all of these, in most cases, in the name of one form of business, whether a business name or a company, or other forms of business organizations. And then one law, the central and major legal framework in Nigeria that regulates economic activities and then doing businesses in the Company and Allied Matters Act, really. It's been over like 30 years, since 1990, that the now recently repealed Act had been in operation, regulating how businesses are registered and how business entities are actually governed and regulated in Nigeria. And then that same Act established the commission, that is the Corporate Affairs Commission. And then having been repealed with the 2020 very laudable feats that I think the government, because we have actually been advocating for the need to either amend the now extant, repealed CAMA, and then probably to bring in realities to drive economy, and then of course to ease the doing business in Nigeria. But with the complete repeal of the previous acts, because of the enormous innovation and then creation of new provisions in the current extant law now, I think that the aspiration of businessmen, enterprises, and even investors, whether foreign direct investments or local investors, to actually have a seamless involvement in driving the economy of the country.
Do you see the possibility of that? You're talking about aspirations,
yes,
for both foreign and people who are here. How possible is that? Because the local businessmen have been having issues. We know Nigeria, as I said earlier, where of course we understand that we need to meet up with global standards because, yes, commercial transactions have gone beyond what we do here. And of course, COVID-19 exposed us to a lot of things that we're not even ready when it comes to ICT. And here we are talking about business. So what is the possibility that, let's not even talk about the foreign investors. Let's start from here. Because if the foreign investors are coming, they will expect that it's going to be like what they are used to over there, but the local investors know how difficult it is to do business here, and here is CAMA, what they knew being repealed, and we're having something new. So what does that portend for us?
You see, before now you may have some challenges in incorporating a business entity, and then you probably may be discouraged in even doing that. We have had times even before the repeal of the previous act and then this extant law, where it takes you so long a time to actually even register an enterprise, a business name, let alone do incorporate a company. And then we began to advocate or agitate for those reviews and possible amendments, and then it came somehow by some way of instrument or orders, and then we began to see the benefit of easing up the registration processes, and then making it rather seamless. As lawyers, for instance, we have the experience of taking longer months perhaps to even get a name to be reserved when you want to register a company. To make it very simple for those who are watching to understand, when you approach a lawyer and you want to register a company, and of course the first instance, if you want to register a company, you begin to think about approaching a lawyer. So you could see that may have been a limitation, but some of the innovations now are such that you can actually even incorporate a company by yourself.
That's the new thing. By CAMA 2020,
you do not necessarily
don't need a lawyer.
Absolutely need a lawyer. So exclusively, take for instance, even as we go down the discourse, that where you had in the previous act a requirement for declaration of statutory compliance with the laws in the process of registering a company, and so you now have a lawyer to do that, and then the lawyer will file the processes for you. So we may have seen that perhaps had been a restriction or a limitation to some extent by people who had wanted to register companies or incorporate companies. But a situation where now you can actually take that up yourself isn't that a challenge for those who would have wanted to do business in that registered entity, a company. Then take again a requirement where probably you needed to be at least 2 persons to incorporate a company. And then because you wanted to do a company, you didn't just want to do a business name because of what you are aspiring to get into, that a business may be too small an entity to get involved in the kind of activity or business enterprise you want to go into, and then you needed a company. So you needed to be at least 2 persons. Before you begin to get the trust and some other person to be a partner in the business you want to do could be challenges. But right now, even as an individual, you can register a company, and I mean a limited liability company. It never was, even up to the last 2-3 months, until just within this month.
Okay, so what are the ones that registered before now, the companies that have been existing that had, should I call them board members or what now? What happens to them? Knowing that for you to register before now, if you have to register, you must have 2 or 3 persons who are going to be part of what you're doing. So what happens to those ones?
It has one very significant advantage. It meant that before now, the position was that at no time would any company have less than 2 members.
Okay.
I mean members, not even directors. So right now it means that even when you were 2 in the old company, and then 1 person probably either no longer a member or dies, the company remains a company.
Okay.
But meaning that before now, once a single person is the only member of a company, assuming you were just 2 and then 1 passes on, it is required that immediately you take a step to make a second person.
Okay, now the ones that had 2 or 3 persons and decide to run alone, dropping the others. Could that be possible?
Yes, it's possible. You can always either withdraw as a member and transfer your shares to a member of a company, or relinquish your share, or even where your directors with minimum of 2, it means that you also can have a director either resign or removed. That has always been, no doubt. But with this innovation, it means that you can a whole lot. Where situations where you needed to have so much, for instance, what we refer to as the minimum share capital of a company, that had been a challenge perhaps to someone who had wanted to incorporate a private limited liability company. Okay, where he needed to have a minimum of share capital of maybe 500,000, as the case may be. But right now, if you have 100,000 share capital company, you can incorporate a company.
So it means that businessmen should just smile.
The objective of this whole thing about the new CAMA is to ease doing business, and then to also ensure that business enterprises are being properly regulated. That's a very fundamental objective.
What's the regulation there?
Yeah, the regulation. Now, there have been observation as to how business entities, whether in business names or as limited liability companies or those registered under Part C, then as it's the NGOs or social organizations and all that, where the issue of corporate governance became a very serious concern, and every investor looks out to the regulation of enterprises and business in any economy, in any space before it gets into. So it could affect how foreign investors would want to come into your economy to get to do business. If business activities and enterprises are not properly regulated in your economy, they wouldn't really come in, because they will be afraid of their investment, of their capital, of their money. How safe is it? How transparent are businesses run in your place? How compliant to even international standards in terms of regulation of businesses, because there are a lot of organizations like the Organization of Economic Development and Cooperation will set standards and code for proper good governance in enterprises. Because just as we cry out for good governance in democracy, the politicians and all that, when it comes to the economy and then in business enterprises, there's also international standard and acceptable standards and codes for businesses to run and to operate, and for directors, those who actually own businesses and those who are seen as the faces of businesses.
Are we actually following those international standards?
Yes,
because a businessman is being asked to pay for this, you pay for that, and that kind of makes them withdraw, because you don't even know what you're being billed for. Well, but apart from the normal taxation, you know that you have to pay your tax as a citizen of Nigeria. But there are other bills, unnecessary bills. This one will come up, you're asked to pay. It makes you feel that doing business here is not favorable enough. And we know that most of these private businesses are open. They help to employ people. They take people off the streets. Yes. And so when it's not palatable enough, and we're asking them, well, because from what you're saying, it means businessmen should be smiling. But I wonder how long the smile can be sustained.
If we had the normal standard be required to dissect the Extant Companies and Allied Matters Act, you would imagine the enormous advantages that are actually there, and then the intention of those who have actually come to ensure that this has come through for businesses to really be properly run in this country. Then of course you could imagine the advantage that it is to the economy, and the expectation is that there will be greater investment. More, forget about even the foreign investors, more persons will now be perhaps be able to register businesses. More persons will be able to even upgrade their business names to limited liability companies. As a lawyer and a corporate lawyer as I am, I know how many friends and relatives and even persons, probably referrals, who had come and wishing to register business enterprises. And then when they explain to me what they want to do, I tell them, I wish you could actually do it like a private limited liability company instead of the business that you want to do. And then the challenges are actually there to be able to meet up with the requirements of doing a limited liability company. Okay. But indeed, what they want to do, and then the company they want to register with, for the category they probably want to be a contractor in that company. For instance, you want to be a contractor, you want to register with the NDDC. And then there are categories of the kinds of entities that you would want to register, and then the kind of jobs that probably will be accessible depending on the category of your entity you're registering with them. You see that if you're registering as a business name, perhaps certain kinds of jobs, you may not be you may not be able to apply for certain kinds of jobs. And then this person may want to, but he can't. Then he comes to me and asks, okay, you need to do a limited liability company. company, a private limited liability company, and I give him the requirements, oh, but I can't meet up all of this. So it becomes, but right now, with those conditions being, so to speak, brought down, it means that greater Nigerians, more of Nigerians will be able to have business entities. And these are the entities that actually drive the process of expanding our economy. One important thing again is this new act has actually looked at two other kinds of business formations, right, that seem not to have been recognized in our act, in our law, but appears to be what indeed people are actually doing in terms of organizing themselves into doing businesses. And that is partnership. Now, we never had in CAMA 1990 registration for partnerships. Not at all. But so this has been something, yeah, right now.
So it's there now.
Right now we have limited liability partnership and even limited partnerships as well. So you could see where you can actually register your partnerships under the new act and then being regulated by the commission.
So before now,
we never had. We only had three forms of business registrations in Nigeria. Either you have the business name, then under Part B, and then or you have the companies under Part A, and then at that time, of course, we had the public and the private companies. Then you have companies either limited by shares or limited by guarantee. Then outside that, these were the ones to do business for profit. Okay. Then if you go to Part C, you would have had any person who wanted to register any entity, not for profit, but to be able to achieve certain objective, whether economic, social, or cultural, or even religious. Okay. That is where you would have NGOs registered and even other associations registered.
It also means that because when you go through it, you say that companies, private companies, can now do without a company secretary.
A whole lot, yes. So you can imagine also. I've had also situations where some, and again,
so it was compulsory. It was mandatory. 1990.
It was mandatory.
You must have a company secretary.
And even when you probably had managed to, perhaps you and your wife, you meet the requirement of 2 persons to incorporate a company, and then you make your children the shareholders. When you want to approach the bank, to open a corporate account for that company as well, they will now probably would say you need to have your company secretary and then file that form as well.
So as it stands now, anybody can have a company, then walk to the bank and open a corporate account.
Right now we have a single member shareholder, single director to be able to open a private limited liability company in Nigeria.
Okay, so that sounds beautiful for the businessman.
So
that sounds beautiful. Okay, now let's go religious a little, and of course we understand that religious bodies and charity organizations is not just about religion now. Religious bodies, charity organizations have been put by CAMA 2020 under the Registrar General of the CAC and the Supervising Minister, and going by that, it means you have to try to make us understand this better, that their trustees will be selected or appointed, is that it, by the Registrar General and the Supervising Minister for these religious bodies and charity organizations. And a lot of ministers, clergymen have cried out, no, we don't want that. They've actually said they're going to resist
that law. That's not the position of the law.
So let's tell us.
It is not that the Corporate Affairs Commission or the minister in charge of such ministry, probably the Minister of Commerce and Trade and whoever that would be, it is not that expressly the commission or the minister would appoint trustees to any organization. No. The same procedure of then, as it was, getting a registered trustees or incorporated trustees of anybody, right, under Part C. You still need those requirements. Let me explain.
Make it clear.
Yes, I'll make it clear. Now, that you want to register an NGO, right, or any association, because let us not, I wouldn't here really put it in perspective as if church was made reference to. And I think it's important for me to say here, the entire Companies and Allied Matters Act, from the first chapter to about 870 or so chapters, nowhere is there a reference
800 and something chapters.
800 and something, sections, sorry. There is no reference to church. So it's not that...
No, it's not about church. We're talking about religious bodies, not just churches.
That's the point I want to make. So there's no reference to either a church or a mosque or a shrine. Okay? So the reference is to associations and religious bodies. Now, this is exactly what it has been and the same. There is no requirement as to the Corporate Affairs Commission nominating your trustees. You still, as ordinary as yourself, propose your trustees, nominate them, and register your organization.
So why the agitation?
I'm in the society, so I've also perceived what the agitations really are, and then fair to those who are agitated. What they need is an explanation. Okay, now you then would have registered your association, let us say a religious body, because right now the agitation is not quite from the NGOs that we seem to understand as NGOs, but for the religious associations. Okay, now you still can register your religious association the way you used to register. You propose the name, you get the name probably reserved, you do your publications, you get your members, elect your trustees on your own. You don't need a minister or the Corporate Affairs Commission to do that for you at this stage, to interfere at all. Then when you register, you publish your trustees and you get your registration on. You operate your business. You operate your religious association. You run.
I'm trying to understand what the controversy here has been.
So you run. Now, before now, Part C, where you register these associations and also register other NGOs like my organization, the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, also incorporated. Now, you never seem to have a clear regulation under that act before now that seem to look at the activities of, say, my Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, the trustees that we have. The chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights is Femi Falana. And then we have other past presidents as members of the trustees, Board of Trustees. We didn't seem to have a regulation to observe by CAMA how transparent they would be in managing the affairs of the organization, how to regulate and check their fraudulent conducts, for instance, and how to also check and regulate their misconduct. It only was limited in the constitutions of the organizations themselves.
So who is going to take charge of the regulatory function? So
right now, the organizations still regulate themselves by their constitution, meaning that their constitution is still there as the primary regulatory instrument to the conduct of their trustees. Now look at what happens. Now, where for any reason or at any time there is an allegation of misconduct or fraudulent conduct, or mismanagement of the funds or whatever assets of that organization, or any other reason that members of the organization, take this for note, that members of the organization feel that there is need for them to complain to the commission, then they do a petition. So the petition, even for an allegation of these offenses, is required to emerge, or rather begin with members of the organization, and it is required that 1/5 of the members of that organization. So it's expected that every such organization will have a list of membership. Who are the members of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, for instance? We know at every unit that will exist in all the corners of this country, you have a list of members. We have here in River State. Then you collect that and then you get the list of members of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, for instance, an example, in the River State branch. The same way expanding to, that's why we transmit the list to the national. So the secretary, national secretary of the committee has a comprehensive list of members. So if we feel that the Board of Trustees today, Femi Falana and others, are probably managing our resources in such a manner that they shouldn't, or they are fraudulent with our resources, or in any of them, gross misconduct, any of them, 1/5 of the members of this organization can do a petition.
So the same thing that applies to your organization
applies to all the other associations,
whether religious body or any other charity organization, same thing. So I'm trying to understand what the issue has been.
Let me go further explaining. So when you do this petition, you submit this petition to the commission. So let us also get one point. The commission is not vested with the authority to arbitrarily and just on itself, unilaterally, then step into the matter. No. How do they come in? It's just like our constitution has provided under section 36 that every person is entitled to fair hearing. Meaning that petition will be heard.
Okay.
So you can understand that even in the first instance where there is a petition against the board or any member of the board for any of those infractions, that petition will be heard, so that person will be given an opportunity to be heard. So then that hearing is in a court.
So that means this particular section has not been properly explained to them.
I don't know. I don't seem to even understand what their sections have actually been.
One of them said recently that the law is an illiterate law, and that he's going to resist it as much as he can.
I've heard a lot of those reactions, but with fairness to everyone, everybody has his liberty to express himself and then to also express whatever opinion he holds, and then they understand. understand, but then it is important. That's why we're doing this program. I think that's why you invited
for people
me.
to know.
So let's see the much we can understand and explain. And what I am saying is not about what I think, is what is expressed in the law.
There? Wow.
So if you get to that, there are two critical sections of this new act that seem to worry those who have agitated. Section 839, and I think the other is 845 or 41. Now, the one that we actually are discussing is the 839,
okay,
which clearly is to the effect, and then it is good for the organizations, for the associations. What they are saying to members of the association is that the commission is now ready to protect the interests of majority of the members of every association.
That means that brings us to the point that they still need to have a secretary, because with the presence of the secretary, that these things will be clear. It means
there's no restriction from how they said it's no longer just mandatory.
I'm thinking that clause of not mandatory, because these things need to be explained. If you don't have someone who understands the law to explain these things to you, I don't think anyone will begin to.
It is not even in respect to this association.
I know. That's for companies. That's for private companies. I know that. But I'm also thinking, because the agitation, someone could be agitating for something and you actually do not understand the law. That's why you're here, to make these things clear to us, because I could be asking for something and I don't know that it's not my right to have it, and I may not be asking for something and I will not know that it's my right to have it. So if these things are not clearly explained to us, we will not know.
So moving forward, when that petition comes, okay, then like I said, to the court it is the court that will decide. It's just like every other allegation in this country. An allegation is what? It's an assertion of infraction of some law or some regulation. So if you allege that a member of a board of an association, whether a religious body or any other organization, has contravened any of those regulations, probably misconduct or fraud and all that, and you do a petition, it doesn't just lie in the hand of the director of the Director General of the Corporate Affairs Commission to therefore just suspend members of the board. No, there must be an order of court, and that order must only and only be issued by a court of competent jurisdiction. And then that order will suspend the. So it means that if you have a religious organization that members of the board are transparent, are not fraudulent, are not mismanaging the assets and resources of the organization, and of course are not misconducting themselves, then you wouldn't have a situation where members of their board will be suspended.
Okay.
And there will not be a situation where anybody will just come and appoint and say you leave and appoint another. No.
Well, I'm just glad you have come to explain these things to us, because I wasn't particularly, I didn't actually understand the reason for the agitations, but you have made it clear now concerning religious bodies and charity organizations. So the same thing applies. It's not about no particular group was mentioned, no organization was mentioned. Let's try to understand these things before we begin to take action. Well, the program you've been watching is Editor Speak. Editor Speak has been coming to you live from the studios of River State Television, channel 22 here in Port Harcourt, and we've been looking at CAMA 2020, I beg your pardon, as it affects businesses and of course religious bodies. My guest today has been a legal practitioner, human rights activist, and immediate past National Publicity Secretary of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, and of course he's been Barrister Henry Ekene. Would like to thank you so much for coming here. Wish we had more time, because the way we were talking before we came on, CAMA 2020 is quite large. It's very big, because if we try to look at it from now, in the next 2 hours we'll still be talking about CAMA 2020. But I'd like to thank you so much for being here, for letting us understand these things about businesses and the religious bodies and their agitations. All right.
I appreciate it. It's a wonderful opportunity, and thank you for the platform.
Okay. Do join us next week at the same time, God willing, on the program Editor Speak. I'm Otuna here as winner. I want to say thank you to everyone that's been part of this program. Confidence, thank you so much. I keep disturbing you. Ezue, thank you. Glorious, praise, thank you to all of you. Let's do this again next week, God willing. Thank you for watching.
For those burning issues, get full details every week as we bring you clearer pictures of happenings around the world as the editor picks the latest information. Editor's Pick. Join us.